it was just kind of destiny. I couldn't find my band that I wanted to be in. Green River broke up right at the right time, and they were the guys I needed to be in the band that I wanted to form.
Back in the late 80s, there was a band from Seattle that was on the verge of superstardom. They had everything that was needed to become the next big thing. They had a great stage presence, a unique sound, but most importantly, they had a very charismatic frontman. The name of the band was Mother Love Bone. Might seem like a sad story, but in reality, they are the catalyst that helped create one of the most important genres of music, which is the 90s grunge scene. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the sad history of Mother Love Bone, from their origins dating back to bands like Green River and Malfunkshun, and how they came together to form Mother Love Bone. Then I'll talk about their frontman, Andrew Wood, and how, despite his talent and stage presence, was somebody fighting a lot of demons. Then we'll get to their debut album, called Apple, and it could have been the album that started the grunge scene, but unfortunately, they faced a tragedy before it's released. But then, I'm going to talk about how the band evolved into other bands such as Temple of the Dog and Pearl Jam. Before the formation of Mother Love Bone, the musicians who would form that band were playing in two different bands. They were crucial to the formation of the grunge scene. They are Green River and Malfunkshun. Let's start with Green River. This band formed in 1984. They are considered to be one of the first grunge bands. The band consisted of Mark Arm on vocals and guitars, Stone Gossard on guitars, Jeff Ament on bass, and drummer Alex Vincent. Steve Turner was also an early member, but he left the band. Their sound was very raw, with a lot of punk rock energy. The band eventually broke up in 1988 due to creative differences. Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament wanted to get a major label, but Mark Arm wanted to stay independent. But now let's go back to the year 1980. The name of the band is Malfunkshun. They were a very flamboyant and theatrical glam rock band. The band was formed by brothers Andrew Wood on vocals and bass and Kevin Wood on guitar. They also had a third member on drums, Regan Hagar. Their sound is a blend of distorted heavy rock with the theatricality and glam rock influence of bands like Kiss and Queen. The band did not get as big as some of the other key bands in the story, but they are important as they show us where singer Andrew Wood began his musical journey. After the breakup of Green River, Stone Gossard, Jeff Ament, and guitarist Bruce Fairweather met Andrew Wood and they started to jam together. The original name for this new band was called Lords of the Wasteland. They got a new drummer named Greg Gilmore from a band called 10 Minute Warning to complete the lineup. The band had a sound that mixed the raw rock of Green River and the theatricality of Malfunkshun. There was an immediate buzz and labels were starting to notice. They eventually signed with Polygram Records and were one of the first Seattle rock bands of the time to sign with a major label. This was one of the first steps in the birth of the grunge scene. The band then released an EP called Shine on March 20, 1989 through Polygram's subsidiary Stardog Records. They recorded it at the legendary London Bridge studio in Seattle with producer Mark Dearnley. The EP featured 5 songs including Chloe Dancer, Crown of Thorns, which would become one of the most recognizable songs as it would be later used on the soundtrack to the 1992 film Singles. One of the reasons this band got a major label deal was the fact they had a great frontman, whose name was Andrew Wood. He was a very charismatic and flamboyant. He wasn't the typical frontman that you would think of when it comes to grunge bands. He was a natural performer, and he created this elaborate stage persona called Landrew, the Love Child. He was inspired by artists like Elton John, David Bowie, and Freddie Mercury. He wore these bold outfits and wore makeup. He had this incredible confidence on stage. He was a showman that was built for arena rock. He saw performing as a form of method acting, as he would bring these outlandish sunglasses and costumes to recording sessions to get himself into character. This was something that set him apart in the Seattle scene. He was charismatic and ambitious and destined to become a star. But despite his public persona, he also struggled with drug addiction. He began using drugs at a young age. By the time he was in his early 20s, he was using heroin on a regular basis. He entered rehab in 1989 with the hopes of getting clean before the release of Mother Love Bone's debut album, Apple, but he relapsed in early 1990. Then, on March 16, 1990, just days before Apple's scheduled release, he was found in a comatose state by his girlfriend after a heroin overdose. He was rushed to the hospital and placed on life support. After suffering reversible brain damage, he was taken off life support on March 19, 1990, and passed away at the age of 24. In what should have been a time for celebration, it was a time of sadness. The album's release was pushed back to August 14, 1990. The release was bittersweet. Apple was met with positive critical reviews, with many writers praising Andrew Wood's incredible talent and the band's potential. However, the album's release was heartbreaking for the other band members, as they were still grieving the loss of their friend. The album became a memorial to Andrew Wood. The album had lots of memorable songs such as Stardog Champion, and Crown of Thorns. But there was another deep cut that was important. The song was called Man of Golden Words. Seems I've been living in the temple of the dog. The song begins with a line, "Want to show you something like the joy inside my heart. Seems like I've been living in the temple of the dog." This line was the inspiration for the new band called Temple of the Dog. But there was also somebody else who I didn't mention yet. He was Andrew Wood's roommate, Chris Cornell. He was also affected by his death. So he decided to write two new songs, which were Say Hello to Heaven and Reach Down. Afterwards, Chris Cornell approached the surviving members of Mother Love Bone, Stone Gossard, and Jeff Ament with the intention of releasing the songs as singles, but the idea eventually turned into a full album project. So they put together a band featuring Soundgarden drummer Matt Cameron and a guitarist named Mike McCready, who was somebody who was friends with Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament. This album had Chris Cornell as the main vocalist, but they also found another vocalist who was unknown at the time. His name was Eddie Vedder. He was invited to Seattle to audition, and he eventually sang backing vocals on many Temple of the Dog tracks, including a duet with Chris Cornell called Hunger Strike. Self-titled Temple of the Dog album was released in 1991. It didn't sell that well at first, but after the grunge explosion with the success of Soundgarden's Bad Motorfinger and Pearl Jam's 10, it became a surprise hit with songs like Hunger Strike and Say Hello to Heaven receiving heavy radio airplay. But Temple of the Dog also led to the creation of another band called Pearl Jam, featuring Stone Gossard, Jeff Ament, Mike McCready, and Eddie Vedder. Pearl Jam released their debut album 10 in 1991 and would go on to become one of the most successful rock albums of all time. So in the end, Mother Love Bone was the band that helped launch the grunge scene in the 90s. In the end, Mother Love Bone became one of the first grunge bands from the Seattle scene in the late 80s and early 90s, and they opened the doors for other bands like Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and Nirvana. They were the first to get a major label deal, so other major labels started to take notice. Then there was Andrew Wood. He was a very theatrical frontman, but he could also be seen as the bridge between the hair metal of the 80s and the grunge scene of the 90s. Later on, grunge bands would also record tributes to Andrew Wood's. One example is the song Wood by Alice in Chains. This is one of their most popular songs. It was written as a tribute to Andrew Wood by guitarist Jerry Cantrell, who was also a good friend. The song addresses Wood's addiction and the pain that was caused to the people around him. So that is the story of Mother Love Bone. Let me know if you're a fan of this album when it came out. I'll be honest with you, I don't remember this album coming out back in 1990, although I was a fan of Alice in Chains and Soundgarden back in the day. So let me know what you think of this. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please give the video a like. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.